Ladies and gents, we're going to start in a few minutes, but before we begin, could you make sure you're connected to the Wi-Fi? Could you enter the Slido app and use hashtag State of the City Economy, SOCE 2021. We'll be using Slido quite a bit during the conference because we have a large virtual audience as well as the audience that's here. So if you could get yourselves Slido enabled, I'd be very grateful. And we'll start the conference in a few minutes. We're just doing some final checks.
Sorry? Once the video finishes, you'll see here. What's up?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the 2021 State of the City Economy Conference in Glasgow, the 23rd episode of this conference. Give yourselves, please, a round of applause for being here. My name's Greg Clark and I'm really honoured to moderate the conference once again. I want to say good morning to the Minister and the Council Leader who are both here in the front row and will shortly be speaking to you. Let me tell you that here in the room we have about 150 people. We have another 400 people joining us virtually online. So it's a fully hybrid event and we will be using Slido for much of the interactivity. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute, but for those of you who are not yet on the Wi-Fi network, either here or where you're joining from, and you haven't yet gone into Slido, please go into Slido. The event code is SOCE 2021 with a hashtag in the front of it. We have, I think, a simply superb agenda for you today, and with 1 month to go until Glasgow hosts the most important meeting in the world for the next decade, I think you can feel that the energy here in the city is really palpable. We will be using Slido, as I've just said, both for you to propose questions, but also to favourite or preference those questions so that you can vote for the questions other people have put there, and when our panel assembles in the second half of the morning, we'll go immediately to the questions that you've prioritised and try to work through them. We'll also be using Slido to do some polls. We don't have the ability to show you those polls on screen, so you're going to be a little bit like me, looking at your screen. But you can see our first poll has already come up, and it asks you the question, how many State of the City Economy conferences have you attended? Those of you who are attending this one virtually, you can include this as attendance virtually. I'd like everybody to vote now, and we'll see how many we've got who've attended which of the conferences. If you're looking in the way that I am at the screen, you can see 126 people have already voted. 73% have attended 1 to 5. 18% have attended 6 to 10. 5% 11 to 15, 3% 16 to 20, 2% 21 or 22, and 1%, just one person, has attended all 23. Take a bow, Gordon Kennedy, please. I assume it is you. It is you. Right, great. 23 versions of the conference. So that's one way we're going to use Slido today. The second way we're going to use Slido is to create word clouds. So if you could look at the next poll, please. What this poll asks you, now we've jumped ahead. We need to go back to the previous one, if we may. There should be a poll here that just asks you to put a word. Yes, what words come to mind when you note that Glasgow is hosting the most important meeting in the world this decade? What words come to mind? You just pop in the words that you like. You can vote for the words that other people have put in. You can continue to put in your own words, and you have to press send, and then eventually we'll be able to see a word cloud emerging here. So please put your words in now. Now, I think I'm going to need to ask the organisers. We've had 73 people have put a word in, but we need to be able to see the word cloud, and I certainly can't see that at the moment. Maybe you can. Can you? Okay, you can see it. I can't, so that's good news. But anyway, shout out some of the words. Opportunity. Pride. Pride, yeah. Hope. Exciting. Great. Okay, I'm sorry I can't see it, but you can imagine this is going to be a rather delicious word cloud. So we'll keep that going for a little while if we may. There are other polls later on, but keep adding words, keep preferencing the words, and we'll make sure everybody can see that later on. Now let's get immediately into our agenda, and it's a great pleasure to welcome to the stage our first keynote speaker of this morning, who is the Minister for Business, Trade, Tourism and Enterprise. Please welcome Ivan McKee, MSP.
Thanks very much, Greg, and it's great to be here this morning, and it's quite a strange event in many ways, because seeing old faces I've only seen virtually for the best part of the last 2 years is really welcome. And also the fact that I'm only speaking here physically to a small fraction of the whole audience. So welcome to everybody that's come through the Glasgow sunshine to be here this morning, and very much welcome to those of you who are sat at your kitchen tables or wherever, logging in virtually. This is the new normal, so it's something we really need to get used to and take advantage of in terms of the economic opportunities that arise from that, and that's something I want to cover in my remarks this morning. As Greg said, it's the 23rd State of the City Economy Conference, which is testament to the longevity of this event, and as Scotland's only real metropolitan area, Glasgow is always a key driver of Scotland's economy and is home to almost 1/3 of Scotland's jobs, business base and economic output. And the Scottish Government is acutely aware of the role that Glasgow City region has in helping our country grow and prosper in the direction in which we want to go, which is why we've invested over £500 million in the Glasgow City region deal. The deal is one of the largest in the UK and empowers Glasgow and its city region partners to identify, manage and deliver a programme of investment to stimulate economic growth and create jobs in the area. It was signed back in 2014, and despite the impacts of a global pandemic and, of course, Brexit, significant progress has already been made and continues to create multiple benefits for the people of Glasgow and the wider region. In fact, just recently we saw the main span of the new pedestrian and cycle bridge installed over the M8, which will encourage active travel and play a substantial role in connecting Sighthill to the city centre, and that's something that I pass by regularly, and it's really encouraging to see the focus of that activity and what it's going to deliver for those communities. Because Sighthill is a powerful example of what Glasgow City Region can achieve, and once that regeneration project is complete, it will have transformed a vacant and underused area into a thriving community. Another example of Glasgow taking steps to reinvigorate those communities and build economic activity as a consequence, something that Glasgow really has the potential to do a lot more of, and we're very much on the right track there. And I'm also fortunate enough to have recently visited Ocean Terminal at Greenock, where construction has started on the new Greenock Cruise Ship Visitor Centre. And cruise ship tourism is an important element of the local economy, and I was delighted to see the progress of that £19 million project. Undoubtedly, these examples of positive economic development highlight the resilience of this region, but we're all too aware of the impacts of COVID and indeed Brexit on the region and city of Glasgow. And it was in recognition of these impacts that the Scottish Government awarded Glasgow's Regional Economic Partnership £675,000 to support recovery in the region, and we also awarded £650,000 to Glasgow City Council as part of the City Centre Recovery Programme. And these grants supported projects such as the Energy Retrofit Study, the Glasgow Chef Academy and the City Centre Repurposing Plan, all of which help to support long-term inclusive economic growth. And the Energy Retrofit Programme is worthy of note because within this strategy is an ambitious and transformative programme hitting the mark of inclusive economic growth that has net zero and well-being at its heart. And I'm also pleased to highlight that Glasgow are working closely with Skills Development Scotland and Scottish Enterprise on the Jobs and Skill Mission for Clyde Mission, which sets out to ensure new, good and green jobs along with a workforce to capitalise on these opportunities. And this also feeds into the Scottish Government's Young Persons Guarantee, which offers employment, placement, training or volunteer opportunities to young people aged 16 to 24. Officials within the Scottish Government have also worked with the Regional Economic Partnership to develop their Regional Economic Strategy, which I understand is due to be published later this year, and will set how the region will recover whilst addressing the challenges that all regions face, such as the climate emergency. And just as Glasgow City Region are developing their Regional Economic Strategy at a national level, the Scottish Government is in the process of developing the National Strategy for Economic Transformation. This is an ambitious 10-year strategy to drive Scotland's economic transformation as we recover from the COVID pandemic and transition to a net zero fair work economy. And recently I held a very informative session with regional partners, including Glasgow, to gain insights on the challenges faced by regions and how to address these within the strategy. And the close working relationship between the Scottish Government and Glasgow City Region means that the national strategy will complement Glasgow's Regional Economic Strategy and drive your vision forward of a greener and more inclusive city region as part of a greener and more fair Scotland. It also complements our programme for government, especially around our ambitious net zero commitments. Glasgow shares our ambitions around these targets, and indeed it's their determination and drive in this area that is bringing COP26 to the city later this month, which will have a substantial and positive impact on the city. And I want to talk a bit about the National Economic Strategy that we're taking forward to transform Scotland's economy over the next 10 years, and the key role that Glasgow City Region as a main driver of Scotland's economy can play within that. And I want to address a very significant topic within that we recognise we need to face into, because it's widely recognised globally that cities and the agglomeration of cities are what drives primarily economic growth and drives national economies forward. But we're also committed entirely as a government to ensuring that all regions of Scotland are able to play their full part in Scotland's economic transformation over the next 10 years. And I think we're very clear on striking that balance, encouraging, working, supporting and driving our strong cities to take forward what they have to offer on the global stage, while at the same time ensuring that all parts of Scotland's economy, all regions of Scotland can play to their strengths as part of that tapestry and deliver what they can to contribute to Scotland's economy. We are determined to take forward both of those strands as we go forward. The National Strategy for Economic Transformation will be about building a stronger economy, a greener economy and a fairer economy. And those are fine words, but what's really important is what sits behind them. What's really important is that we have the specific actions coordinated across all of Scotland's regions and all of Scotland's industrial sectors to make sure we're all coordinated. As Cabinet Secretary Kate Forbes describes this, a national endeavour to take forward the development and seize the opportunities for Scotland's economy. For a stronger economy, it's about tackling the long-standing productivity challenges, and Glasgow City region has a huge role to play there. For the greener economy, it's about delivering on our very ambitious climate change and net zero targets, and COP26 gives Scotland and Glasgow in particular the real platform to take forward not just the policy changes we need to make at a national and international level in maintaining the focus on net zero, but very much the industrial, business and investment opportunities that come out of that, and making sure that as many of those as possible land here in this city and this country. And on the fairer economy, it's about tackling the scourge of low pay and insecure work. It's about ensuring that the real living wage becomes a normal part of how we do business. And it's about working with those sectors that are challenged in those areas, in hospitality, and tourism and leisure, many of which are key in this city, to make sure that that transition also works to the benefit of businesses, employees and the city region. I'm very keen that we take input into our national transformation strategy from all regions of Scotland, and in particular from Glasgow City region, and those conversations have started already. It's very important that we understand how Glasgow sees itself over the next 10-year period, and we're able to build that into our national strategy. And those strengths are many. Glasgow, as you know, or maybe you don't, produces more satellites than any city or region in the world outside of California, something we're hugely proud of. The investment in Barclays, you'll see across the river, talks to our significant strengths in the city region in financial and business services. The life science work that's going on in Precision Medicine and the Innovation Centre is hugely important and right at the cutting edge of that dynamic and world-beating sector we have here. The tech sector in Glasgow, again, hugely important. The marine sector across the city region, which figures in the Clyde mission work, again, hugely important with great potential. In the event sector, the SEC, one of Europe, indeed the world's leading locations. And of course, underpinning all of that is the work of our universities and colleges, who I see are represented here today. Scotland, as you know, or maybe you don't, has more top universities per head of population than anywhere in the world. I haven't done the calculation for Glasgow, but it would be really interesting. I reckon we'd probably be the top city in the world. Somebody should have a look at that particular statistic. And our colleges as well, who do some great work both here and very much increasingly internationally, supporting inward investors and businesses with the skills requirements they have to make this city and this country the leading FDI location again this year outside of London, across the whole of the UK. And that innovation in the innovation districts and the work that the universities are doing there is absolutely fundamental to taking forward and building on those great strengths that we have. Because at the end of the day, it's about being bold, it's about being ambitious, it's about understanding what transformation really means and having a strategy to deliver it. It's about understanding Glasgow's phenomenal potential. This city has so much underused capacity, so much potential in terms of space, skills and opportunity that we really can take forward. And it's about making sure that we as a Scottish Government support Glasgow and the city region to compete head to head with the best in the world on those key sectors where we have so much strength and depth. So the message I'd leave you with is it's about cooperation, it's about working together, it's about making sure that everything that we do as a government is aligned to help this powerhouse of Scotland's economy deliver on its potential on the global stage, and driving forward what we know Scotland can be and Glasgow can be now and over the next 10-year period. Thank you very, very much for your time, and very much looking forward to the panel discussion later. Thank you.
Minister Ivan, if I may, thank you very much indeed. I thought a brilliant review of how, in the context of both COP, COVID and Brexit, Glasgow is thriving, reviving and also transforming. And the interesting question that Jim and Anton, I'm sure, want to comment on later is Glasgow possibly the best city in the world for universities? I'm sure they think it is, but it will be good to find out. Now, just before we hear from our international guest, who's recorded a very special message, we're going to do vote number 3 on the Slido polls, if we may. So this one asks you, what do you think will be the key benefits of Glasgow hosting COP26? And it asks you if it's brand exposure, is it accelerated decarbonisation, Is it business opportunities? Is it more visitors? Is it all of the above or none of the above? Please vote. So 50% of you are saying it's all of the above. In fact, we're just over 50% ahead, heading to 60% on all of the above. A lot of votes for brand exposure, quite a few votes for accelerated decarbonisation. But basically, you feel positive about all of that, except for 3% who say the benefits will be none of the above. And we'll obviously hear from them later on during the questions. 200 of you nearly have now voted. So thank you very much. All of the above is the key winner there. Now, Councillor Susan Aitken, who will speak to us shortly, invited one of her many network contacts around the world, Mayor Eric Garcetti, who is not only the mayor of the city of Los Angeles, but he's also the chair of the C40 group of the world's most significant cities who have committed themselves to a decarbonisation path. Susan invited him to say a few words to you today, and here he is on screen.
Hello everyone, I'm Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti. In less than a month, world leaders will arrive in the beautiful city of Glasgow for the most important convening in recent history, the 26th UN Climate Change Conference, or COP26. As chair of C40 Cities, a network of 97 of the world's mega cities who are committed to addressing climate change, I want to thank the city of Glasgow for its partnership and efforts to make cities' participation in COP26 a great success. You see, the role that cities must play in climate change is clear. Cities make up 85% of the world's GDP, home to over half of our population, and cities are responsible for more than 70% of global CO2 emissions. But we're also leading the charge in the transition to net zero. Today, 64 of C40's 97 cities, including LA, have in place climate action plans that meet or exceed Paris commitments. That's compared to just one country. And through Cities Race to Zero, cities of all sizes and from across the globe, we're setting bold climate goals. For example, Glasgow, along with more than 800 other cities, has pledged to reduce its fair share of emissions 50% by 2030 and to reach net zero by 2050. In Los Angeles, we're also aiming to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, and we've committed to building a carbon-free grid by 2035. A goal that a groundbreaking study with the US government showed is not only possible, but will make our grid more reliable and affordable. The benefits of this investment are undeniable, from thousands of new green jobs and dramatic greenhouse gas reductions, to better air quality and improved public health, especially in our most disadvantaged neighborhoods. And making a difference in the lives of Angelenos who are most impacted by climate change is central to Los Angeles' Green New Deal. That's why LA is piloting an all-electric car share program in low-income communities and aiming to grow our tree canopy in areas of greatest need by at least 50% by 2028. Across the globe, cities are setting the pace of climate action and driving a green and just recovery from this pandemic. Because what's good for our planet must also be good for our people and our shared prosperity. And research by the C40 Global Mayors COVID-19 Recovery Task Force shows that investing in a green and just recovery can reduce emissions and deliver transformative health and economic outcomes, and help to create over 50 million good, sustainable jobs across the globe by 2025. Through Cities Race to Zero, COP26 is an opportunity for cities to leverage our collective power to drive the national and global climate action on which our future depends. Together, we can create jobs, improve public health, grow our economies, and pass along a healthy planet to future generations. So thank you for your partnership and your commitment to climate action, and I can't wait to see you in November.
Let's give Eric Garcetti a round of applause. Mayor Eric Garcetti of Los Angeles and the chair of the C40 network. Let's welcome to the stage our morning keynote speaker, the leader of Glasgow City Council, Councillor Susan Aitken. Susan.
Morning, everyone, and thank you, Greg, and thank you very much to Ivan and to Eric for really fantastic contributions. I was delighted to hear Ivan say the word Glasgow, I think almost as much as I'm about to, which was exactly what I wanted to hear. And the C40 network that Eric Garcetti chairs has been an invaluable support to Glasgow and Glasgow City Council as we've been preparing for COP26. And I hope you'll note that he said it was a network of the world's mega cities. That's us he's talking about. So this year, our annual City Economy Conference takes place in the most remarkable of contexts. Glasgow, like cities across our planet, is re-emerging from the unplanned and unforeseen crisis created by the global pandemic. And like our peers in plotting our path to recovery for our economy, communities and public services, we do so standing on the precipice of another profound change, this time one we've long known is upon us. And all this at a time of unprecedented international profile and visibility for our city. 1 month from today, presidents, prime ministers, mayors, CEOs, climate scientists and campaigners will converge here for the 26th UN Conference of the Parties Climate Negotiations, COP26. Their collective goal: to deliver on the commitments of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, limit global warming to 1.5 degrees and create a safer and more equitable future for us all. This COP is a pivotal moment for our planet, as it will also be for its host city. Regardless of the outcome of those international discussions, we are ready to translate attention and profile into opportunity, to secure the investment that will be drawn to the city of COP, and to ensure that this talented, innovative and globally connected city is in the best possible place to become a pioneer in the green economy. The 1990 Year of Culture and the 2014 Commonwealth Games were milestones in Glasgow's long-term re-emergence from the era of deindustrialisation. As our economy, communities and public services rebuild and renew after the pandemic, COP can be the catalyst for so much more. It can be the defining moment in the story of modern Glasgow. Addressing the climate emergency isn't just a moral obligation or an existential necessity, though it is certainly both of those. It's also one of the greatest economic opportunities we have in the next decade and beyond, and one we'll experience the benefits of for generations to come. Transitioning to an economy and society within planetary boundaries maybe isn't the first thing that people think of when you ask them what the Council does, but municipal authorities have been catalytic at other pivotal points in Glasgow's history. We constructed the sewers to tackle disease outbreaks, and we built the first power networks. So why not us now? Scotland has been a global leader in the transition towards a more carbon efficient and climate resilient economy. But addressing the scale of climate change alongside the challenges of inequality, Brexit and COVID requires us to innovate and collaborate like never before. We need to harness that same visionary, aspirational and transformative spirit that's seen Glasgow continually rise to meet and overcome the challenges of our past. And we have a plan for what comes next: Glasgow's Green Deal. Delivered in partnership with business, government, universities, colleges and communities, the Green Deal roadmap will be unveiled and go to committee later this month. In its broadest terms, it will put in place the frameworks required to bring forward the solutions to the climate emergency at scale and pace. It will instil change and innovation within our systems, policies, investment choices and institutions to deliver action in line with climate science. And it will scale up investment in climate action into the billions, both directly by the city and in partnership with governments and business. The investment requirements are huge, topping £200 billion in the UK's major cities alone, but it will also be transformative. Investment in local climate action could create over 800,000 green jobs across these islands by 2030, rising to 1.4 million by 2050. And for every £1 invested in climate mitigation and adaptation, £9 are returned in savings and benefits. Alongside our Climate Emergency Action Plan, our Circular Economy Route Map, our Open Space Strategy, our forthcoming Community Wealth Building Plan, a critical element of Glasgow's Green Deal, which some of you will already be aware of, is our Green Print for Investment, a prospectus spanning £30 billion of investment and development opportunities on which we're inviting investors across the globe to open discussions with us on. The Green Print underscores the connectivity between our overlapping priorities: reducing emissions, adapting to and mitigating climate change, modernising the systems on which cities like ours depend, and addressing social challenges from fuel poverty to poor transport, all while stimulating the city economy and recovery. As Mayor Garcetti said, much of the success of COP26 will be measured by how cities can take the practical steps necessary to secure the future of our planet. In a month's time, those gathering here in Glasgow will include investors. And a critical and prominent area for discussion in the negotiations will be the financing of the net zero transition. Our Green Print puts Glasgow at the vanguard of those discussions, a ready and willing partner for investment and change. This city of COP is the ideal demonstrator for where the solutions for sustainability can be found. The plans include a £10 billion retrofit of thousands of homes across the city region, utilising the Clyde to power new district heating networks, capping the M8 to reduce air pollution, reconnect the city and create high-quality public realm. And we have a plan for connectivity across the city region with the Glasgow Metro. The Metro and its importance to Glasgow's social, economic and environmental well-being is something I've championed throughout my time in this job as City Leader. It was a central recommendation of the Connectivity Commission that I announced at my first State of the City in 2017, and we are now working really closely with Transport Scotland to progress the Metro proposal, and I'm optimistic that it's going to be the start of something truly transformational. Retaining our place as a competitive driver of Scotland's economy is crucial for Glasgow's continuing and future prosperity. But we need to do that in a way that delivers sustainable jobs for the new and emerging green economy. Too many of our citizens still live with the damage left behind by the deindustrialisation of the 1980s, a transition that was anything but a just one. That cannot happen again. To secure a transition that is fair and lasting, we're collaborating with partners in our universities, colleges and training providers on the practical steps required to ensure that people can access emerging jobs and opportunities. Work underway by the University of Glasgow's Professor Alan McGregor will provide us with a plan for action and delivery of that just transition. We're already equipping our young people well through promotion of STEM subjects and digital skills, but we need to give equal consideration to the people employed in sectors that are reaching the end of their time, ensuring that they too have translatable skills and opportunities. And we need businesses involved in those conversations too, about the skills and expertise you need to ensure that you remain competitive as we respond to this challenge. We're starting from a solid foundation, and our city economy does remain strong. We've had the fastest growing city economy in the UK pre-COVID, and the second highest performing economy among the UK core cities. Glasgow's economy is still expected to grow by 5% almost this year. We're the third greenest place to live and work in the UK outside London, and we aspire to top that list. We've had the biggest reduction in CO2 emissions, and we produce more renewable energy than any other UK city. We remain a leader in attracting and retaining talent and a skilled workforce. In the last 10 years, Glasgow's rate of degree-level educated residents has increased by nearly 20%, an additional 95,000 individuals with a degree-level qualification. We're home to the second highest degree-level educated workforce among the core cities, and we're closing the gap on Bristol. And we've made significant strides in reducing the number of individuals with no qualifications, a massive area of focus for the Council. Between 2019 and 2020, Glasgow experienced the largest percentage point reduction among the UK core cities for its rate of individuals with no qualifications, decreasing by 4% in the last year to 12.5%. Our educational attainment also continues to improve, and Glasgow just recorded our best ever positive destinations figures for young people in education, work or training. Glasgow is primed for recovery. Global firms will want to use the profile and the momentum of COP to build bigger, stronger and more resilient business bases. Barclays open their flagship base in Tradeston in just a few weeks. Like many others, they appreciate that they've invested in a city with some of the best business and development support available anywhere. But we want to go further in how we support businesses in the city. To attract and nurture new and existing collaborations, we'll offer free location and property advice, access to business consultancy, funding to support recruitment, and soft landing space across different property types to suit different investors. The spectre of Brexit looms large, however. Many of the issues foretold are now coming to light. Glasgow, as we know, voted overwhelmingly to remain in the European Union, and we were clear that the city needed access to the single market and that free movement of people, which has brought so many benefits to Glasgow, should remain. Obviously, we know that didn't happen. Instead, we have labour shortages, increasing fuel prices and cost of living, coupled with the removal of the Lifeline universal credit uplift and the end of the furlough scheme, meaning that we're going to enter a period of uncertainty and added stress for many. And I have to say I have little confidence that the Prime Minister has any idea how to solve the problems his Brexit deal has created and which threaten the recovery we're working so hard to build and the international profile that being COP host will give us. But we are doing what we can within the city to overcome those challenges. When I announced the establishment of the Glasgow Partnership for Economic Growth in 2017, we knew that that type of Team Glasgow partnership, building on the existing work of the Glasgow Economic Leadership Board, would be crucial to the city's long-term success, with all of us facing in the same direction, with shared agendas and priorities, and our distinct contributions forming a cohesive overall approach. And so it has proven to be. Our economic partnership ecosystem enabled us to quickly stand up the Glasgow Economic Recovery Group last May, with our recommendations undoubtedly helping to significantly shape the Scottish Government's own response. And the City Centre Task Force, co-chaired by my colleague Councillor Angus Miller and Chamber of Commerce Chief Stuart Patrick, continues to inform the recovery of the biggest and most important centre of economic activity in Scotland. The look and feel of Glasgow, like many other cities, has been significantly affected by the impact of the pandemic, and we've got robust plans in place to recover and get the city looking the way that we all want it to again. But what we've also learned from the past 18 months is that when and where there's a pressing need, cities can adapt and change faster than we've ever realised or attempted in the past. Responding to the pandemic, we implemented our Spaces for People programme, a fast-tracked reconfiguration of roads and streets for pedestrian and active travel use. Much of that will now be made permanent. We've also seen how the partial pedestrianisation of George Square, for example, and the pedestrianisation of the Kelvin Way has allowed Glaswegians to see those changes in real time, to reimagine and indeed start preparing for a more people-centred Glasgow. Back in 2017, I spoke of the need to create conditions in our city and our town centres to encourage people to spend more time in them, attractive civic spaces that citizens want to be part of. The new George Square, for example, even though it's not yet in its final form, is showing us right now just what that can look like. And we also know we need more people living in our city centre. That was important pre-pandemic, but it's even more so now. Glasgow's lagged behind our competitor cities in the numbers of people making the city centre their home, but that's changing. Earlier this week, plans for the 10-hectare meat market site took a major step forward. This site on the eastern edge of the city centre will see 500 new homes built, as well as business startups and community facilities. It will truly transform Glasgow's inner east. Recent months have also seen confirmation of work commencing on several sites, including the announcement by the St Enoch Centre that residential will form part of their redevelopment mix, and work to change the old Virgin Megastore on Buchanan Street into flats. While this is all extremely welcome, we also know that we need more flexibility in our ability to quickly change the use of empty sites so that they don't become blights, either in the city centre or in our neighbourhoods. And we continue to have conversations through the National City Centre Task Force with the Scottish Government about cities having updated powers to react to this increasingly pressing need. Glasgow's Indigenous business base, our SMEs, are the lifeblood of our city economy. Thousands of local businesses for whom the world is rapidly changing. Through a targeted support programme and working in close collaboration with our city partners in the Chamber of Commerce and the Federation of Small Businesses, we'll help businesses understand what carbon neutrality means for them. And we are going to launch a Green Business Grant to assist our business space in their journey to net zero. Digital is key to our net zero future. In launching the city's first digital strategy at State of the City 4 years ago, we knew then that access to affordable, reliable digital connectivity was pivotal to so much of what we want to do to reduce inequality and create inclusive jobs. This focus through the digital strategy has taken us from having just 300 kilometres of full fibre in 2019 to 5,000 kilometres planned and deployed in 2021, making us one of the best digitally connected cities in Europe. Glasgow's digital tech economy is now Scotland's largest, with almost 34,000 jobs and a turnover in excess of £1 billion. We need to continue to nurture this growing, clean, green and dynamic sector. When the city worked together to secure a Channel 4 hub, we did so knowing that it would be a catalyst to growing and sustaining our vibrant screen sector in the city. We wanted to seize the opportunities created by the requirement for broadcasters to commission programmes outside of London, and we have. With Vigil, Indiana Jones and a certain superhero franchise filming in the city in recent months, the screen sector in Glasgow has never been more buoyant. Building on that success, earlier this year, alongside the Scottish Government, we announced a near £12 million investment in Kelvin Hall to repurpose part of that to new studio space. And this new development will further support the city's thriving creative industries sector, help develop our skills base and attract even more film and TV productions. And just yesterday, we agreed to a film incentive grant to enable Warner Brothers to set up a full production in Glasgow for the very first time, a game changer for the city. We're also working closely in partnership with the screen sector on its plans to reduce its carbon footprint by helping develop a centre of expertise to address the environmental impact of film and television production. Our space sector is expanding faster than anywhere else in the UK, with ambitions to grow it in value to £4 billion by 2030. We have among the highest levels of space-related activity, a phrase that I love, in Europe, and we manufacture more satellites than anywhere in the world outside of Houston. We've got strong roots in data and groundbreaking research, and with companies such as Alaba Orbital, Spire, R3 and AAC Clyde Space leading the way, the city's building on their expertise and experience to help further grow this exciting sector. Underpinning this is our research capability and supply of skills and talent through our colleges and universities. And both the University of Strathclyde and the University of Glasgow explore bleeding-edge technologies for space exploration, ranging from space manufacturing to space robotics to solar sails. Don't ask me to explain what those are. Jim MacDonald and Anton Muscatelli are here. They might be able to tell you. That connection, crucial connection between our academic institutions and industry and the city is also felt keenly in our life science and precision medicine work. This cooperation alongside our internationally renowned clinical trial infrastructure is why Glasgow remains a powerhouse of Scottish life sciences, with over 40% of Scottish life science companies housed in the Glasgow City region. A quarter of the region's top innovative technology firms are working in the health and medical sectors. That's higher than in Manchester, Liverpool and Leeds. And it's so important for tackling the health inequalities that still have such prevalence in our city. It puts Glasgow where we want to be, a city of our times dealing with the challenges of our times. As we seek to take our place at the vanguard of climate transition, Glasgow has an opportunity to become a pioneer across so many sectors, undergoing and delivering fundamental change, and become a model for cities in transition. If there's anything I've learned from the many dozens of virtual engagements I've had with cities across the globe in the past year, it's that there isn't a single challenge or problem that Glasgow faces that isn't shared. There's nothing inevitable or particular about our challenges, nothing that says that Glasgow will fail where others succeed. We'll never stop striving to fix our long-standing issues. Far too many of our fellow Glaswegians live in distress, and that's an affront that we can never accept. But simply doing more of the same won't cut it for Glasgow, especially when it hasn't worked before. Ambition, innovation and judicious risk-taking are the keys that will unlock the solutions to our challenges. All great cities, and Glasgow is indubitably a great city, are perpetual works in progress. We should be constantly restless, using the very fact of our challenges to drive us forward. Where are the next places to improve, the services to reform, the jobs to secure, the life circumstances to transform? And where can we work together to do that? This might seem counterintuitive, but one of Glasgow's greatest assets right now is our flaws and our challenges. The world has taken notice of our story, cradle of the Industrial Revolution, the end of the heavy industrial era, and how we still contend with and respond to the legacies of both. We are in many ways a quintessential city in transition, and as such, the ideal host for COP. Glasgow is the place where modern Scotland is made and remade, where the manifestations of global change, be they good or bad, make themselves felt first and most acutely within our nation. And the pace and scale of the change we collectively face now can't be overstated. At the turn of the 20th century, the horse-drawn vehicles that populated the streets of New York City were replaced in their entirety with motor cars within the space of just over a decade. But it was said that if you'd asked people at the beginning of that decade what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Glasgow can do much better than waste our time trying to invent faster horses. We can match ambition and achievement, combining a green and successful economy with green, inclusive and healthy communities and a safe and secure city. We have a challenge, a climate emergency that threatens the safety of our whole planet, Glaswegian lives and communities included. And we have a plan to tackle it, within which also lie the actions that we need to address the injustices and the legacies of our past, to clean our air, to modernise our waste management, to create greener, safer, healthier streets and places, to connect our communities, restore vacant and derelict land, improve our infrastructure, hardwire resilience and vibrancy into our city centre, eradicate fuel poverty, and grow new skills and create high-quality jobs and life chances in a modern, sustainable city economy that puts the well-being of people and planet at its centre. And this time, we'll bring every one of our communities on the journey. That's what the world will be looking for from Glasgow in November, and that's what we'll show them. Not just because we want to impress Joe Biden or the UN, but for ourselves. Because Glasgow and Glaswegians need that kind of ambition. Our future city starts now. Thanks very much for listening.
Susan, thank you so much. There's so many inspiring things that you've just said that I've been trying to write all of them down. You made the point that the revival of the Glasgow city economy is a work in progress, but it's now deep, diverse, sound, resilient, agile and vital. And you made the critical point that the post-industrial transition was not a just transition, but the post-carbon transition must be so. And then you went on to explain how, with Glasgow's Green Deal that you'll shortly announce, with the green print for investment, the focus on retrofitting homes, seeing the energy coming from the Clyde, a new metro transport system, a new approach to public space, so many things are going to be transformed in the city. And then you went through so many recent achievements with SMEs, digital technology, the screen sector, the space sector, the universities, life sciences, health, medicine. You said Glasgow is a city of our times, dealing with the key issues of our time. All great cities are always a work in progress. It's a quintessential city in transition, an ideal host for COP. Thank you so much. I have to write an article about Glasgow next week, and you've just given me everything I need to say. Susan, absolutely wonderful speech, and I hope that everybody here and those listening at home and in their offices could feel the inspiration. Let's do two more quick polls before we start to hear from our two Vice-Chancellors, if we may. And if we can go on to poll number 4. Thank you very much, by the way. So this is about the city centre. The city centre is a key focus of change, and Susan spoke about that. What does it need most, in your opinion? Is it more homes and residents? Is it more public space? Is it more retail space, more hospitality, more creative and innovation space, or better connectivity? Just one choice each, please, if you don't mind, and please vote now. So homes and residents doing very well here, 33%. We'll let this slide for a little bit longer. We'll wait for 150 people to vote, I think. So keep sending in your votes about this. Home and residents in the lead at the moment. Better connectivity coming in second. More creative and innovation space is next, and then more public space. No votes so far for more retail space. No votes at all for more retail space. Very interesting. More hospitality, just 2% of votes. I think that's probably 3 or 4 votes. 181 of you have voted. And homes and residents comes up with 38% in the lead, followed by connectivity, creative and innovation space. Thank you very much. Let's go to the next poll, if we may. This is the final poll we're going to do today. Can we have poll 5, please? Great. Does the pandemic recovery provide the driver to accelerate the innovation economy in Glasgow? Yes? No? Maybe. Please vote now. What do you think? Does the pandemic recovery provide the driver to accelerate the innovation economy? And of course, we're about to hear from our two principal vice-chancellors, and I'm sure this is one of the things that they're going to talk about. So 60% of you are saying yes so far. 140 people have voted. Take a couple more moments. Okay, we're nearly up to 200 people voting. 60% say yes, 35% say maybe, 5% say no. It's not an opportunity to do that. Let's hear from the first of our two Vice-Chancellors. Please welcome to the stage Professor Sir Jim MacDonald, who is the Principal and Vice-Chancellor of the University of Strathclyde and the Chair of Glasgow Economic Leadership.
Thank you very much, Greg, Minister McKee, Councillor Aitken, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It really is a great pleasure to speak at this, the 23rd State of the City Economy Conference, the longest running continuous city-based economic conference in the UK, which is really a testament to the continuing importance that Glasgow and Glaswegians place in the city's economic development, the inclusion of our citizens and our growth. It is also, of course, a signal that we in the region for many years have fundamentally understood the importance of place, and I'll come back to that. But it's particularly pleasing that here we are together, many of us in person, here at the Radisson in our city centre. It was the McKinsey seminal report that many of you may remember in the 1980s, commissioned by the Scottish Development Agency, now Scottish Enterprise, that first identified the importance of the city centre to Glasgow and the city region's economy. This is our shop window to the world. It's the home to those professional services that McKinsey said was so well placed to attract to Glasgow. And of course, Glasgow city centre did not disappoint. It is now home to 150,000 jobs, and it's also the transport, civic and cultural heart of the city. Importantly, it's also the home to a large portion of Glasgow's hugely successful and world-renowned places of learning. The Minister, we will provide you with plenty of data. Apart from my own institution, Strathclyde, our sister institutions, the University of Glasgow, Glasgow Caledonian, the Glasgow School of Art, the Royal Scottish Conservatoire, and our fine colleges based in the city. Let's not forget, this is a massive asset base, approaching 150,000 students, many of them from international places around the world, which tells us we need to keep our doors wide open, be a welcoming country, feed that talent base and allow our students to stay here, thrive, push their own careers and contribute to our economy. But we must capitalise further, of course, on the distinctive array of talent, education and research that we generate in this city. It's a major attractor for businesses and investors alike. I'll comment on that again. So as well as those 150,000 students, the two research intensives in the city, Anton's Glasgow University and Moan Strathclyde, our competitively won research is way disproportionate in terms of the scale of the city of Glasgow. The quality of our outputs from research is internationally recognised, and more importantly these days, the impact of our research in creating job opportunities, attracting businesses, impacting society and people's health. Universities are at the heart of this, and that cluster of institutions that I've talked to you about is unrivalled anywhere else in the UK in terms of its richness and its quality. But with 30 years of continuous support by a powerful partnership, which includes, of course, Glasgow City Council, the private sector and Scottish Enterprise, amongst others, Glasgow City Centre has indeed emerged since McKinsey as Scotland's largest centre of employment. It is a true success story, and Glasgow lives up to our reputation as Scotland's economic engine. Nonetheless, as we heard from Councillor Aitken, Glasgow City Centre has been the hardest hit location in Scotland as a consequence of COVID and the restrictions designed to keep the population safe. As evidenced by our friend Greg Clark and the Centre for Cities, it has been the UK's largest city centres, London, Manchester, Birmingham and Glasgow, that have been hit hardest because they are the central locations for office-based businesses, retail, education, hospitality, accommodation and cultural employment, and that all of which has been so severely affected. And Glasgow has been no different from the other large UK cities. As Councillor Aitken said, we recognise the problem, but let's do what Glasgow always does. Let's find the solutions Let's have the confidence and the vision to take ourselves through these challenges and imagine a very bright future for Glasgow, including being a net zero city that will be an exemplar for all, particularly when we showcase in 6 weeks' time. So it's no wonder then that the city centre realignment is the #1 priority identified by the Glasgow Economic Recovery Group for Glasgow's economic recovery from COVID. Glasgow city centre success as a service economy has driven our economy for the past 30 years. In a post-COVID world, services will still be essential, although with adaptations we all recognise, like hybrid working. However, what the city centre excels in is a community that collaborates and has a sense of place. It's a place where people meet, we exchange ideas, meet face to face and help shape the future. And it's our people and organisations in the city centre that will drive innovation based on high-value skills, inquiring minds, great talent, research, business and entrepreneurship, and including on that journey the citizens of Glasgow too. So promoting innovation is one way in which we can help make the city centre more resilient. And other factors, of course, include significantly increasing Glasgow city centre's population and improving its amenity and attractiveness. One of our wonderful city's USPs now is that it has 3 innovation districts, and we need to tell that story more regularly. Places and platforms for attracting and developing innovation and new enterprising businesses, effectively magnetising this city for talent and investment, fed by great education, world-leading research and an exciting vision that comes from the heart of the city's leadership. And these new innovation districts are developing into the new 21st century enterprise hubs, and they're playing a critical role, similar to what happened during the construction of the International Financial Services District, which put Glasgow on the financial services map. The Glasgow City Innovation District, or GCID, and the Advanced Manufacturing Innovation District Scotland, which I'll tell you about, and the Glasgow Riverside Innovation District, led by Anton and his colleagues at Glasgow, focusing on precision medicine, nanotechnology and quantum, represent some of Glasgow's economy's brightest prospects, as well as investment that already amounts in our own case with Strathclyde, with GCID and the manufacturing district at the airport, of over £500 million of investment already committed over the past 5 years. Strathclyde presents itself as a technological university, and again, Minister, we have an ancient university in Glasgow which we should be proud about, and we have a world-leading technological university, and these two resonate very well and complement each other along with the other institutions. At Strathclyde, we are the anchor institution to Scotland's first innovation district, the Glasgow City Innovation District, bound by George Street, Albion Street, Ingram Street and High Street. Please come and see it. And along with partners in the Glasgow City Council, Scottish Enterprise, the Glasgow Chamber of Commerce and Entrepreneurial Scotland, we are well on our way to expand from Glasgow's commitment there and Strathclyde's Technology and Innovation Centre and the Novo buildings on George Street to double our available innovation space in GCID to create a 60,000 square metre tech zone, stretching out to High Street and Ingham Street now with an additional £150 million worth of investment in the next couple of years. And you may have seen, in terms of external endorsement, just last week, Strathclyde announced that one of our alumni, US business leader Dr. Charles Wang, whose company, the Innovo Medical Group, has given us lateral flow tests, helping us get back to work, help us to repopulate our cities. Charles gifted £50 million to support the construction of our new Tech East building and an international business and entrepreneurship hub in business. So as well as a huge vote of confidence in his alma mater, this is an investment in Glasgow. His daughter was born in the Rotten Row Maternity Hospital. He has emotional ties. And I should also say, back to that open doors policy, international friends, students that come here to be educated, who ultimately become business people, policy influencers and investors. So let's make sure Glasgow's doors, as far as possible, can be stayed wide open in spite of some of the headwinds we have in UK policy. So, our innovation zone expansion will increase our capacity to support industrial innovation clusters formed around, for us at Strathclyde, health tech, fintech, space technology that Susan spoke so well about, quantum, 5G and 6G communications technologies, and industrial informatics, or AI, machine learning. And these clusters had their public launch just last month. And GCID doesn't only promote and attract innovation and investment, but it helps to nurture high-level skills that attract and anchor investment in Glasgow. And it's also helping to create a new live, work, play, collaborate and innovate quarter in the city centre. And that's something that we'll press on, and that's a way to draw in our citizens, create investment opportunities. And it will support an increase in the residential population, an increase in local spend, and further contribute to the vibrancy and welcoming environment for which Glasgow is so well known. And we're also, of course, in this year of COP26, and the challenge that we all face for net zero, we are committed to the investments, along with our partners, to make GCID carbon neutral. The new innovation buildings will be built to Passive House Plus standards and be amongst the largest such buildings in the UK, something we should be very proud of as we look forward to presenting ourselves in COP26. But innovation is not just important for the city centre, and of course it is that. It's also important for the city, our city region, and Scotland as a whole. Beyond the city centre itself, at the Advanced Manufacturing Innovation District Scotland at Glasgow Airport, we've been building on Strathclyde's long-standing investment in the Advanced Forming Research Centre, helping drive innovation in manufacturing and re-establish Scotland's historic reputation for making things and doing it well. The term that we should be proud of being Clyde built had an international resonance in the shipbuilding industry. So we are working to ensure that designed and made in Glasgow should be part of our global offer now too. The Scottish Government is investing £65 million in the National Manufacturing Institute for Scotland. Minister, we thank you for that, to innovate around Industry 4.0, robotics, AI, data analytics, digital twin, advanced materials, to get that innovation into SMEs, into our supply chains, right across Scotland, including here in Glasgow. And earlier this week, I had the pleasure of welcoming Minister Jimmy Hepburn to the Advanced Manufacturing site. He's Minister, as you know, for Higher and Further Education, Youth Employment and Training, and he was struck by the scale of the facility and by our ambitions, not only in the technology and the research, but for training and retraining and pathways to new jobs. So it was no accident then that the Innovation District was chosen by the pharma industry also to locate the new £56 million Medicine Manufacturing Innovation Centre, which is set to develop the next generation pharmaceutical manufacturing processes to drive forward innovation in the medicine supply chain. And we can now imagine, we didn't see this 3 years ago, of course, but given our critical experience now of the lack of resilience in the UK supply chain, the lack of ability to manufacture vaccines and medicines, this is of its time, and Glasgow will be on the map for these new manufacturing technologies so important to public health. And it's also, of course, been pioneered through a public-private collaboration between the innovation organisation called CPI, my own university, UKRI, Scottish Enterprise, Scottish Government, as well as at the heart of this industry, AstraZeneca and GSK, and that's what we should also note. These are not simply academic endeavours. They're places where we catalyse industrial engagement in research, innovation and job creation, demonstrating that these innovation investments do indeed attract private investment and create new jobs, skills and great opportunities. So let me move to a broad summary. Glasgow, like Scotland, has three grand challenges that its economic recovery must prioritise. A long-standing one, as we've heard already, is productivity. Productivity drives higher wages and greater life chances. It's the reason why our young people invest and stay in education and why our businesses invest in a place like Glasgow. And innovation plays a key role in underpinning productivity and developing the high-level academic, business and practical skills that will help drive Glasgow's economy forward. Another long-standing issue for Glasgow is delivering inclusive growth. And we heard Councillor Aitken talk about that too, that draws in, develops talent and gives pathways to opportunity and success. And Glasgow and its fine learning institutions that I listed earlier can be proud of their track record in offering opportunities for all, but much more needs to be done. And the innovation districts I've talked about, and you'll hear more about from Anton, is committed to being a fair work set of innovation districts that includes Glasgow citizens on the journey. The third grand challenge, of course, is net zero, which is one of the most wicked challenges we face in the 21st century. I think Glasgow has shown ambition. The Scottish Government has been unwavering from its commitment to decarbonise, and the UK Government now is putting in the policy frameworks that converge in what we're trying to do here, which will be so necessary as an engineer to take that systems approach to getting policy alignment, get the investment opportunity there, and the people that we are training and educating here being a great opportunity to build industries. A hero of mine, Lord Nick Stern, who will be known to Anton, an economist at the London School of Economics, I work closely with him, who will be here for most of COP26, talked about the economics of climate change. So let's Glasgow rise to that challenge and create industries as well as solutions to the net zero challenge. So we will hope and pray that COP26 is a success, not just for Glasgow, but for humanity's sake. And we all need to play a part as institutions, companies, public bodies, individuals and communities. And innovation will be at the heart of that and will continue to be a key component in our just transition to a net zero society. And much of the technology and innovation that has enabled Scotland to succeed as a renewable energy hub is here, and much of it driven out of our institutions here in Glasgow. And as Minister McKee knows, a report I recently published on the floating wind opportunity for Scotland, we must capture that, because ironically we have not captured the economic value of offshore wind over the past 10 years. So focusing between government, industry and academia will allow us to do just that. So universities across the city and the country are at the leading edge of understanding our climate and are developing technologies enabling society to achieve those 2050 stretch targets on net zero. So let me conclude. We know what Glasgow needs to do to boost its economic recovery from COVID and to address the three grand challenges that we face. And as in the past, it needs to do so with confidence, commitment and flair, taking inspiration from the business and civic partnerships that drove Glasgow's economic resurgence at the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century, and indeed through the 80s when we had to reinvent ourselves. Innovation is a key platform for Glasgow's economic recovery. It will help to underpin a more economic resilient city centre. It will help to drive inclusive growth across the city and make a real contribution to creating a net zero society and economy. So where I started 35 years ago, McKinsey set out a roadmap for the development of a service-based economy with a strong policy focus on Glasgow city centre. That policy focus has been unwavering for the past 35 years. In doing so, the development of the city centre has benefited for people right across Glasgow and its city region, creating new life chances for tens of thousands of individuals and families, and that has been no small feat. Glasgow and its partners in government and the private sector have a new challenge before us to shape an economic recovery that meets the challenge we face in productivity, inclusive growth and attaining net zero. And this is a challenge that I'm sure with your and your partner support we will rise to again, as we have done so for the past 35 years and beyond. Glasgow is a great city of reinvention. We should be proud of that. From the decline of the Atlantic trade to the deep economic restructuring that Glasgow did have to face in the 1980s. And as we have done so many times before, these times, these pandemic and climate emergency times, this challenges us to reinvent, reimagine and innovate our city once again. And as always, Glasgow works best when it works together. And together we can deliver a new economic recovery that will help make Glasgow flourish. We are authentic, we're empathetic in this city. We've got a great asset base, first and foremost our people. And with that army of talent and commitment, I look forward with optimism to the next 10 years plus. Thank you very much.
Jim, thank you so much indeed. From the city centre to the role of the universities, to the focus on the 3 innovation districts, and you took us through the key role of global alumni as strategic ambassadors for the city. You went on to talk about exactly what's happening in the Glasgow City Innovation District, and then you took us back to the big picture, the 3 big challenges that we must respond to, all of them, of course, in one way or another in train. Jim, thank you very much indeed. Let's go immediately then, if we may please, to our final speaker, Professor Sir Anton Muscatelli, who is the Principal and Vice-Chancellor of the University of Glasgow. Anton, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Greg, for that kind introduction. Minister McKee, Councillor Aitken, ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful to be here to speak at this 23rd State of the City conference. What I was asked to do is to just give you some of my own reflections on the city this year and how I see an inclusive and innovation-led recovery for Glasgow. And it was fantastic to hear Jim's speech setting out what we do as universities. And Jim and I have almost a symbiotic relationship, because without even being able to speak last night, because he was a sleeper and I was somewhere else in Glasgow, we've managed to actually combine our speeches to hopefully give you a picture of everything that's happening involving our own institutions without overlapping too much. So thank you, Jim, for setting out things so clearly in terms of the innovation districts. It would be remiss, before I get into that theme, not to mention COP26. It's been mentioned already by a number of the speakers. We're only a few weeks away from welcoming the world leaders to our city. And as a number of the speakers so far have already said, Glasgow has an abundance of potential to deliver a green recovery and a just transition, and it's fantastic that we will be at the centre stage. But let's hope, as Jim said, that it's not just being at the centre of that stage, but that COP26 will produce the targets and ambition that the world needs in order to survive. If we look at the city, I think we've seen a real shift through the gears in the last year to make good on the commitments that we've made as a community in terms of sustainability and addressing the climate emergency in a just and a fair way. Councillor Aiken mentioned the announcement of the Council last week of the £30 billion green print for investment, which is a portfolio of transformative climate investment projects, which was really very welcome news. And in the inclusion in particular within that green print of decarbonising heating across Glasgow, one of the most wicked problems that we do face in terms of the climate challenge, and an area in which my own colleagues at Glasgow and Jim's colleagues at Strathclyde are providing world-leading expertise, will be of great significance in supporting the city across to achieve its net zero ambitions. The new green print also provides for a Glasgow City Region home energy retrofit programme, a 10-year, £10 billion programme, as we've heard, to upgrade the insulation of all homes in the Glasgow City Region. It's another really good example of collaboration in the city. It's an exciting development which follows a collaboration last year between the city government, industry and academics across Glasgow to retrofit an old tenement block in Govan Hill. Led by Professor Ken Gibb, an expert in urban studies and housing at the University of Glasgow, this project was launched just before the pandemic hit and saw Glasgow City Council, the Universities of Glasgow and Strathclyde, Southside Housing Association and architects in the city work together to produce a sustainable model for retrofitting Glasgow's old housing stock. And this is an example, a successful example, of what we can achieve for the city when we work together, and was the result of an academic MOU signed between the city government and all the higher and further education institutions that commits us all to cooperate and innovate for the benefit of the city. And I'm going to come back to this theme of collaboration, because I think we need to go even further and faster in that. But before that, again, another welcome step this year has been the launch of the Sustainable Glasgow Green Economy Hub Charter, which the University of Glasgow was very pleased to support. The Charter's aim is to encourage businesses in the city to adopt more sustainable business practices by setting out how they can take action within their own organisations and sectors to help contribute to a green recovery. If I look at my own institution, in 2020 we launched a cross-disciplinary Centre for Sustainable Solutions. We published our own Glasgow Green strategy for achieving carbon neutrality. It sets a very ambitious target for achieving net zero by 2030, which is probably the most ambitious across the UK universities. I think UCL and one or two other universities match it. But it's a hugely ambitious strategy. And at the heart of this is integrating sustainability into decisions that we take as a university and as an actor in the city, and using our status as an anchor institution to develop a fairer and more just city for our citizens. Next week, we're about to launch one of the first of our inter-university centres in Glasgow. This is an initiative which we're undertaking in collaboration with the University of Edinburgh across our two cities. This will be an opportunity for young people aged 7 to 18, which will support and build upon the significant achievements that we've made in widening access. Because if we are to achieve the regeneration efforts in the city and this just transition, we have to bring all the talents to bear, as has already been mentioned. And in addition, it will also help with the regeneration efforts for derelict land in the Govan area. That's the first of the 2 Glasgow centres that will be opened. A second one will follow in Maryhill and will be part of that Glasgow Riverside Innovation District that Jim mentioned. We've also been developing a suite of online micro-credentials to support upskilling and reskilling, and indeed several of these courses were designed with the climate emergency in mind, offering learners outside the university, so these are not our students, these are citizens of Scotland and beyond indeed, offering learners the chance to study climate change, carbon literacy and sustainable decision making, which has got to be mainstreamed. It's not simply for the specialists to know about carbon literacy and climate change. It has to be mainstream to change individual behaviours. We have been engaged with local partners such as the Chamber of Commerce and the NHS to identify areas of need in the city and to support in providing the necessary upskilling opportunities. One of the greatest challenges, I think, in delivering a green recovery and a just transition is ensuring that we have those necessary skills in the city to really tackle the challenges that we face. But with this challenge, I think, comes a real opportunity. We have an opportunity to align the skills with the needs of our city, an opportunity to link the skills agenda with inclusive growth in place-based innovation, creating jobs and stimulating investments across the region. And Jim said something very interesting at the end of his talk. At the heart of this lies the need to drive productivity growth, because if we want good jobs, if we want a just transition, we need to tackle that productivity growth challenge. And we have a fantastic opportunity, as has already been said. The city has significant potential in areas such as advanced manufacturing, quantum technology, life sciences, decarbonisation. We have a great opportunity to be part of that latest industrial revolution. So let me come back to a couple of themes that I think are really important here if we are to achieve that potential. I was asked to write a report in 2019 for Scottish Government on research and innovation and the role of higher education and further education within that. And I spoke of there were two key points. It was a longer report than that, but there were 2 key points. One of them was the need for clarity of purpose. The second was a need for really deep and meaningful collaboration between the different actors in that research and innovation space. In the same vein, in the June 2021 Scottish Funding Council, in their review, they speak of a more coherent education and skills provision so we can align our sector to meet the needs of our young people facing a challenging job market and society's needs for the lifetime skills to achieve a just transition. And to do this, we need focused leadership. We need both national and local government to develop a very clear strategic and longer-term vision for our sector and to make clear what we need to create to be the innovative nation that we want to be in Scotland. Collaboration was another key theme. We collaborate hugely across our higher education sector and with industry, as Jim pointed out. But I think we need to really deepen that even more if we are to achieve some of these objectives. We have a real opportunity to build, I think, on the digital transformation accelerated by the pandemic. The shift to net zero will place much more of an emphasis on digital innovation and green technologies. There will be again a need to upskill workers to become, for example, software engineers or to support those who have maybe been out of education for long periods of time to gain the necessary skills for new digital technologies. Our universities again have the potential to support with that reskilling, given that we are often at the forefront of those digital innovations. For example, at the University of Glasgow, we're developing the use of AR and VR, and with Strathclyde University, we're leading Scotland's 5G centre and the next generation 6G, paving the way for new digital healthcare solutions and green technologies. Here in Glasgow, I've often spoken of the potential for the innovation agenda, the interplay between industry and academia, and the high-tech jobs which could result as offering us the opportunity to reimagine the entrepreneurial spirit for which we're famed internationally. As has been mentioned, throughout the world we have this proud history of manufacturing, of shipbuilding and heavy industry. We can't afford to look backwards, but that tradition should actually give us encouragement that we are able to leave a new legacy of innovation and industry and invention in the 21st century. Jim very kindly mentioned the Glasgow Riverside Innovation District, which has a couple of elements. One in Govan I've mentioned. The other is around our campus in the West End with an innovation area just on Church Street and Byres Road, which is at the back of our new Advanced Research Centre, which is the biggest interdisciplinary science building anywhere in the UK that's being built. And it's a fantastic asset for the city, part of our $1 billion investment, which again shows how important we are, universities like Strathclyde and Glasgow, research intensives, in shaping the economy, in driving that economic recovery from COVID into just transition. So the opportunities are right across the city, are right there across the city. We've seen the River Clyde go from launching the world's greatest ships to becoming a world leader in nanofabrication, making devices measured in a millionth of a millimeter. These opportunities exist. We just have to be able to take them. And as Jim said, pivotal to this will be our city's higher education institutions. We are not only providing the innovative solutions through our universities and excellent research needed to tackle the challenges facing the city, but we are also key facilitators of Glasgow and Scotland's economic recovery and growth. And it's about how, as I say, we can engender an even deeper collaboration to make sure that these various innovation districts that we're driving, these various centres of excellence, can get even closer together and drive that economic recovery. Very soon, the University of Glasgow is going to launch an analysis of our economic impact, and it's striking to see the true economic value of our research, teaching, and collaborations with industry. I, even as an economist, actually found some of the figures that came out of that study staggering, and we'll be sharing them very soon about the impact that we have. Universities in and of themselves are drivers of economic growth, as I said, and hopefully of productivity growth. And as we plan our recovery over the next decade, we mustn't lose sight of that. We mustn't lose sight of this great asset that we have. How successful we are in achieving a just transition to net zero and in providing an inclusive recovery from the pandemic for all of Glasgow's citizens will depend on many factors. Investment, collaborative working, as I say, clarity of purpose, sound planning, and many more. The will is there, the potential is there, but we need to make it happen. We need our city to come together and to get behind the work of our universities. We need to create these opportunities that I've spoken about, using our potential to innovate and collaborate with industry, supported by local and national governments, whilst ensuring that every Glaswegian can reap the rewards socially and economically. So I'm looking forward to the panel session and hopefully to be able to discuss some of these issues in detail. But it's great to be with you in person, as other speakers have said. Thank you very much, Greg.
Anton, thank you so much. You took us through the big challenge of COP26, but you reframed all of it as an opportunity. And you talked about the link between the COVID disruption, the accelerated digitization, the opportunity to use that to remake the city. And you focused very strongly on the just transition. The role of universities in the just transition, but particularly the way that this transition needs to be one that's about skills, about places, about sectors, and you referred, of course, back to the challenges that Jim set us. Nobody will have forgotten what you said very briefly at the end about the economic impact of the university, and I'm certainly looking forward to the report, which I think is being launched in 2 weeks' time. And you suggested in your final closing comments that this is about doing it together. And there's something, I think, rather magical in what you said about the way we can combine our response to the pandemic with our response to the planetary emergency and put those two together as accelerators of one another. So thank you very much indeed. We're going to go immediately now to our panel session. We've been given permission to have a few extra minutes if we need them. So I'm going to invite the Minister, Susan, the Leader of the Council, our two Vice-Chancellors, and two special guests. Firstly, Gillian Doherty, who's Chief Executive of the Data Lab, and Guy Jefferson, who's the Chief Operating Officer at SP Energy Networks. Please come and join us. So the panel's going to work in a sort of well-tried and tested format. And that format is that I'm going to ask a couple of questions of the panelists we haven't yet heard from, and then basically it's over to you. As you'll be aware, we already have 74 questions that have been put on Slido. If you want to add more questions, please do. But even more important, prioritise the questions that you think are the most important. We'll make sure we get through all of those. So I'm going to begin, if I may, with Gillian and say welcome to the panel. Great to have you here, Gillian. So Anton really referred to this, but this massive acceleration that's happened in digitisation, I mean, should we expect post-pandemic that things are going to go back to how they were before? What does this acceleration mean and what's coming next?
Thank you very much, Greg, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'd probably break that down into two different things. One is the impact that digital transformation has had in the last 18 months on how many of us work. And the second aspect is digital transformation for businesses that have enabled, alongside other technologies, the new business models, access to global markets, increased productivity and operational efficiencies. So firstly, on the way we work, I think many of us have commented that it's great to be back in person. And as we had to accelerate the pace of digital adoption to enable us to work in the last 18 months, I don't quite see that we'll go back to exactly normal as it was, but we will find a new balance. There has been some great benefits, the chance for more inclusion, certainly the chance for us to travel less, which has improved on that pathway to net zero. I don't think we'll go back to the way it was, but there'll be a new balance and a new hybrid. But secondly, I think on the digital transformation for organisations, I think it's how do we keep up that pace of acceleration and the adoption of new technologies. And it's really exciting to see new technology roles in Glasgow, and indeed a report in the last week by Adzuna and Accenture have shown that technology roles in Glasgow has increased by 30% in the last year, with significant expansion in AI, quantum and cloud, which is really exciting.
It is indeed. Now, Anton made a very key point. He said that the increased digitisation gives us an opportunity to build, in a sense, a more just transition, a more inclusive economy. Does that idea make sense to you?
Absolutely. I think the use of these technologies allows us to accelerate and do things we weren't able to do before. And in particular address new opportunities, be it climate tech, health and med tech, and that's quite exciting.
Okay, great. So, Guy, welcome to you as well. So, obviously with everything that Susan said about how the eyes of the world are going to be on the city, not just next month, but for a long time to come, how's the city going to stand up in terms of its recent track record of investment in energy infrastructure? Is it doing the right things already, or is there a big gap that has to be bridged?
I think it is, and as we went through the presentations today, I started to realise why you'd invited me along, because I can see in all the presentations and all the innovations that Glasgow are putting forward that energy infrastructure is absolutely vital. So I started to sit more and more proudly in my chair as we went through the presentations, and I think we are in a good position. I guess if I look at infrastructure is always a good indicator of prosperity ahead for a city or any region, and we've invested over £20 million in the infrastructure here in Glasgow over the last year, and not only to get ready for COP, but also to support some of the other initiatives. A very important point was made about COP's a great opportunity, a great kickstart for us, and it's certainly proved the case in infrastructure. But we're also looking well beyond that to all the innovations that have been mentioned today by all the panellists. And I'm delighted that, for example, we've invested £5 million, or are investing £5 million in the new First Bus Caledonia depot to allow them to charge their new electric buses, which we were formative in starting to develop. And that's a good example of something that may have happened eventually, but because of COP and because of this kickstart, I think has happened a lot sooner, as well as an investment at SEC. The last thing we want to see at the SEC campus is loads of diesel generators pumping out fumes to provide power, so we're delighted to provide a legacy of a new supply into the SEC that's going to make sure that their ambitions in the future are made with regard to the renewable generation that they're looking to develop at SEC. So these are good examples, I think, of how COP is making a difference.
And Guy, do you expect then this acceleration in investment in renewables and associated sources of energy, will that continue after COP? It's not just a question of being ready for the eyes of the world, is it?
So absolutely. I mean, we know our prediction and what we're getting ready for is a 30% uplift in investment in infrastructure over the next 5 years. We need to be ready for 90,000 electric vehicles being brought into Glasgow. We need to be ready for 50,000 heat pumps being delivered in Glasgow through some of the regeneration projects that Susan talked about. So that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. So yeah, there's a massive impetus in terms of infrastructure, and I think I saw a question in the Q&A that talked about green jobs. So every job that we have in Scottish Power is a green job, so it's a great opportunity for the citizens of Glasgow to take some of those jobs. We have hundreds available now. If you want to apply, look at our website.
Great, Guy. Thank you very much. We might come back to you on the green jobs in a minute, and I've sought permission in advance to call our Minister Ivan and our Council Leader Susan, so I hope you'll allow me to do that. Susan, there's about 20 questions amongst the 74 that are something to do with the city centre, which you majored on and Jim majored on as well. And there's a lot of different versions of this question, and I've been travelling the world again for the last 3 months, and every city I've been to, there's a conversation happening about the city centre, because of course it's been very challenging during COVID to manage the public realm, to reanimate the city centre. So I suppose there's two parts to the question for you, if we may. One part is, what's the agenda for helping the city centre get back to where you want it to be? And then there's the most prioritised question is, how do we create a compelling proposition about living in the city centre in Glasgow?
And so I think one of the things when we talk about the impact of COVID, we talk about the economy, we talk about our communities, and we sometimes forget that public services, which are the bedrock ultimately of a civilised society, I would say, but our economy and our communities have also been enormously affected. And we have seen the impact of that. The most obvious one is education, of course, and everyone knows the huge challenges that our schools and our young people and teachers have had to contend with. Our care services have been significantly affected, but probably the most visible one that people see that has been as a direct impact of the pandemic is the condition of the environment round about them. And it is something undoubtedly that Glasgow, along with other cities, is facing. And we have a plan to get that back on track. We've got our operational colleagues are rolling out a number of things right now. Big focus on enforcement. I think one of the things, in actual fact, one of the quite the good things that's possibly come out of it is that it's allowed us to really identify where our challenges are. So we're got a focus on fly tipping, on enforcement around commercial waste, for example, really trying to get into some of the root causes of these challenges. But we also have an opportunity in there, not just to return to where we were, but to take a leap beyond that. And I mentioned in my speech deliberately modernising our waste services, because there is that direct link to climate change, of course, and it's one of the reasons, obviously, COP coming to Glasgow is focusing minds on all of this, and our physical environment and climate change are directly interlinked. So we do have that opportunity not just to go back to where we were, but to think about what does a modern city need in terms of those core basic public services. Because a lot of the time, we continue with our public services in the way that they've been for a long time. What does a modern city need? How do we get to that point? How do we get to the point for Glasgow, for example, where we have historically really not made the grade on recycling? But if we're going to be net zero by 2030, if we're going to meet all these big ambitions that we share right across the panel, then that's one of the things that we're going to have to tackle, because it's a big source of emissions. So don't just absolutely get the city back to where people need it to be, to feel attractive, to feel safe, to feel welcoming, and to feel like it's their home. that it's the place where they want to spend time. It's the Glasgow that they've always known. But drive further as well. Take the opportunity to invest for reform and to invest to take us that leap beyond and fulfil so many of our other ambitions as well. If we think about something like, and some of the officers in the audience will be getting antsy because we're not quite there yet, but in development is our active travel plan, which is extremely ambitious and will see every neighbourhood in the city basically within yards of an active travel route if we, once we get there. That's clearly going to involve considerable infrastructure investment in our road and pavement networks. So again, there's an opportunity there while we take the leap forward to address some of those long-standing challenges that have been niggles and that for those of us who've been, I've been an elected member in the council since 2012, have been the things that have filled up our inboxes year after year and which have never changed. They might move forward slightly. This is the opportunity to take that big leap forward. And that is a huge part of that vibrancy in the city centre as well. I think Glasgow, historically, of course, we had what looks to us now, looking back, the bizarre, deliberate policy decision by city fathers, they were city fathers back in those days, to depopulate our city centre. And Glasgow it's one of the few cities in the world that's gone from having a population of 1 million plus to going backwards. And we are moving forwards again, we are growing, but we want to grow exponentially. And I think our city centre is the answer. We've got everything. We've got culture, we've got vibrancy, we've got the urban edge that Glasgow does so well, with respect to my fellow city leaders in Scotland, who I work very closely with, nowhere else in Scotland has, like Glasgow. That offer is there. I don't think we need to do a huge amount to activate that and to bring people into our city centre. We've got the space, we know we've got the land, we activate that land and we build the highest quality homes that we can, mixed tenure, absolutely crucial. This cannot be about, as some other cities have seen, I might mention Manchester perhaps, pricing our own folk out of newly popular and newly cool places to live. Needs to be mixed tenure, needs to be affordable, it needs to be vibrant, mixed, diverse. We've got all of those things already, we just need to build the houses.
Great, you heard it here. Thank you very much, Susan. Ivan, there's one question here which has been prioritised by lots of people, which is, what's the best outcome we can expect at COP? And I guess this is a very open question. It could be in terms of the interministerial agreements, it could be other things. But what do you think is the best outcome? What does good look like?
I think you're right, the question can be taken on lots of different levels. And clearly, at the global level, it's hugely important that there is agreement on what that direction looks like and the firm commitments from governments around the world to meet those very ambitious but very necessary climate targets. But I think from a Scottish perspective, in addition to that, it's hugely important that we use it as a platform as best we can to promote the opportunities for Scottish business, to showcase what we're doing in cities like Glasgow and around the rest of Scotland, to be able to face into and tackle the real challenges of climate change, how we're doing that in a technical sense, innovation that backs up the businesses we have that are delivering those technologies, the investment opportunities that are there for global investors to come and take part in what we're doing here. So it's a huge opportunity for us to grasp, and I know a lot of work's happening in the city and in partnership with Scottish Enterprise, the Scottish Government and others to do the best we can, and I'm looking forward to engagement with other global government ministers, with ministers from around the world, from engaging with investors, engaging with businesses, to showcase those opportunities and make sure we can land as much of that in Glasgow and in Scotland as possible.
Great, thank you very much indeed. I think there's such a range of opportunities here, isn't there, that we need to grasp. Jim, questions come in saying, understood what you were saying about the city's universities. They're obviously absolutely critical. But isn't there more that they could be doing to really tackle economic and social deprivation? Obviously, Anton spoke about this as well, but do you think that there's more that you could be doing in terms of your civic duty?
Sure. Well, I would suggest that we are doing lots, but you can never do enough. And it's a great question. Remember, universities are a critical part of the ecosystem, but we're not a panacea. We work with others to achieve much of these ends. If we talk about widening access and widening participation in all of that between myself and Anton, we'll admit over 2,000 young people from the two most challenged quintiles in the region and in the city. It's an unfortunate term, the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation. I come from Govan, so I come from the lowest quintile in that measure, although I never felt multiply deprived, I have to say. So with that, you have two research intensives, and that's important for our reputation in the city. But the doors are wide open for opportunity and for access, and it doesn't happen at the gates of our universities. It happens deep into the education system, with schools and with colleges. So this year we've admitted 1,300 students from SIMD not to 40 this year at Strathclyde alone, and yet we've still maintained the fourth highest entrance qualifications in the UK. So that's one element. I would say, and perhaps I haven't told the story well enough, the innovation districts that I mentioned, over the next 7 or 8 years, the Glasgow City Innovation District will create 4,000 new jobs. It'll contribute between 1 and 1.5 billion GVA. The Advanced Manufacturing Institute for Scotland at the airport will create 5,000 new jobs and £500 million GVA per annum. And one of the ways we'll do that is, and we're already, that's why Jamie Hepburn was with us, we've created the Manufacturing Skills Academy, which is focused in on apprenticeships, technical skills, degree-led students and PhDs. And why is that important? And I come back to what I said earlier on, Greg. There's no silver bullet in any of this. Anton talked passionately, and I agree with him, about collaboration. We need to take a systems approach. We need Ivan and Susan as our policy leaders to get lined up. We have to align with what's going on in the UK and internationally in terms of capitalising the investment into this city and into Scotland. We need the universities to do that as well. So there's no single actor that will achieve this. We need to understand the interdependencies, understand the goal. And the last thing I'll say about this, and it was mentioned by Susan, that perhaps the most ephemeral part of this is leadership. Leadership, commitment, collaboration, and tell the story. It's something I go on about all the time. We're still not telling this city's story well enough. We've got a great narrative, and as Susan mentioned earlier on, we have to deal with the challenges before us. But what gets people excited, what gives us the encouragement to include more people in the journey, is having a very exciting destination. So let's paint the future of Glasgow through COP26, post-COVID-19, built around innovation, new industries, inclusive growth, and let's have a bit of fun doing it, rather than being po-faced and wringing our hands all the time. Glasgow's got a great story to tell. Let's get after it, and I assure you that will attract greater investment into the city.
Great, thank you very much, Jim. Very, very clear. And indeed, you both did speak about this topic. Anton, you may want to add anything to what Jim's just said, but the question I want to ask you is really about the river, because obviously with the Glasgow River Innovation District, you're very close to that. There's a question in here really about the role of the river more generally in the future of the city, and also about the Clyde mission, which you may want to comment on later, Susan. But Anton, do you see that the river is being optimally used at the moment? Is there more we can do?
I don't think it's optimally used, which is one of the reasons why I think Clyde Mission was conceived, and why the city and Scottish Government and other agencies like Scottish Enterprise have been so focused on trying to do this. Rivers are fantastic assets. It was a fantastic asset for the city, of course, in its first industrial revolution. But it's a fantastic asset because of the reasons that Susan mentioned earlier. It is part of the climate change transition. It can be part of the solution for part of the city around achieving that net zero. It is a fantastic opportunity for us to really achieve some of the social justice elements of our new, our just transition, because, as has been said by Jim and others, it is also partly because of that deindustrializations. It contains some of the most deprived areas of the city. The reason why we ended up developing our own sort of innovation district between the university, which is close to the river actually. People keep thinking of the University of Glasgow as being somehow detached from the river. It's actually just next door to the river. One of the reasons is, of course, because we've got the UK's biggest acute hospital there in the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, where we co-invested with the NHS to develop probably a unique clinical innovation zone that really kick-started a lot of this work around the whole area of life sciences. So we then said, well, this is great, but we hear from the community in government, we've engaged a lot with the community as we've been talking about our Glasgow Riverside Innovation District. Yes, that's great, but it can't just be an island in a deprived area. This is about trying to really use it as an asset to create jobs in that area, to drive that sort of just transition so that it genuinely also creates more equality of opportunity. And I mean, what's great about it, and when I go and speak to some of the companies that have relocated, including actually a company from California, and when they moved to the Clinical Innovation Zone, they said, well, I asked, why did you come here, just out of curiosity? It's because of the skills in Glasgow. It's because of the fact that it's a more pleasant place to live than a place that actually is overheating in terms of some of the demands on skills and housing. There are real opportunities, and it's creating jobs locally. So, for instance, sorry, I don't want to go on at length, but one of the things that that COVID caused us to pivot to in that whole area is we created one of the lighthouse labs, which at UK level is obviously helping with the testing against COVID and also sort of pandemic surveillance. But we are the only lighthouse lab anywhere in the UK that's run by a university. All the other ones are run by private companies and NHS. And the reason it's run by a university is because I had 800 of my colleagues who on day one of COVID dropped their tools and said, we want to help our fellow citizens. We've got an emergency on our hands. And I think that is that kind of community spirit which is within our institutions, which then can drive some real economic and social change. So it's about how we use these fantastic assets on the river to really improve the economic sort of needs of the whole of the city, but actually then joins up the whole of Glasgow City region. Finally, Jim mentioned NMIS. Again, that's part of that continuum. It's a fantastic asset. We've got the opportunities of land, skills, other assets, all co-located along the river. It's a fantastic opportunity for Scotland and a fantastic opportunity for the country.
Great, thank you very much, Anton. Guy, I'm going to come to you and then to Gillian, and then I've got a big question for Ivan and Susan to get stuck into. So, Guy, there is this question here about green jobs, and what it says is not just how can we get more green jobs, but how can we make more of the existing jobs green. So, what's your view about that? How many of our incumbent industries are also going to be able to become greener? How do they do that?
So, I'm fortunate to be involved in Sustainable Glasgow, our hub. Anton kindly mentioned the charter that we've pulled together in terms of bringing businesses together to talk about the challenge we've got for net zero and how we might work together, as well as businesses, big organisations in Glasgow. And that's one of the areas we've actually focused on. And in reality, the way we're moving, most new jobs are actually green jobs. We'll probably drop that at some point, because if I speak about my own experience, what we do is all focused on green sustainable delivery. It's all focused on moving towards net zero. Therefore, everything that we do is trying to facilitate that outcome, as well as looking at our own carbon footprint as an organisation and making sure that we are doing our bit in the wider context. So I think every job, ultimately, the way things are going, is going to be a green job, and I think the more we talk about that, the better. And just to pick up on Jim's point, we maybe don't talk enough stories or sell ourselves that well. Anton mentioned the Clyde and what's been done there. And as a result of that collaboration, lots of discussions happened about the cost of infrastructure, for example, and it was stopping a lot of development potentially happening at the Clyde side in terms of some of the businesses that were interested. Strathclyde were also involved in terms of looking at creating power from the Clyde. We all came together as a group, and as part of that, we were able to secure a $5 million investment in a new primary substation in that area, which takes away a huge cost for businesses who are developing and looking to do sustainable things in that area. So that was a result of collaboration. That was a result of what Glasgow does really well, and probably better, certainly than any city we're involved in working together, understanding a problem, getting something shovel-ready in terms of a proposition and being able to deliver it.
Great, thank you very much, Guy. Now, we have reached 12 noon, and I want your permission just to keep going for 10 minutes, but I do know that Jim has to leave now. So can we just give a round of applause, Susan? I think everybody in the room was nodding earlier when Jim said this is about confident storytelling, telling the world what we're really all about. And Jim, thank you very much for your contribution there. If we may, Julia, I'm going to come back to you. And there's a question here which may not be obviously a question for you, but it says, what about the role of our libraries, our museums, our community centres and everything else in Glasgow's renewal? And I guess the question is, do you believe that this big acceleration of digital takes away opportunities for physical centres, or does it somehow augment them? And if so, how does it do that?
I think it absolutely augments them and gives them further opportunity to impact their local communities. Those community centres, libraries, they have historically been places where we come together, where we learn, where we understand, and the role of technology and digital and other capabilities, those places can use them to connect with their community better and to provide further opportunity for collaboration and for learning. So I do think there is a massive role in those places in conjunction with digital technologies to deliver better and more for their local communities.
Great, and I hoped you might say that, but of course there is this view out there somehow that digital and physical are in separate realms and they should be juxtaposed. Actually, one can enrich the other. Do you want to say anything more about how you see that happening in Glasgow?
I think it's essentially those places are local to those communities, and I think the way that we can really enable them to inspire others is if they are demonstrating and giving evidence and examples of opportunity. There's a great phrase, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And it maybe comes back to some of the inequalities and some of the deprivation we have. Actually, those places have a role to play in presenting opportunities to our young people. And there's some fantastic work that the Chamber is doing with the Developing Young Workforce, bringing together industry and young people to show those opportunities. And there is certainly opportunity for those places to contribute to that.
Great, okay. So we're going to do two more questions if we may. Ivan, there's a couple of questions here. One says, when is the Scottish Government going to stop allowing 0 hours contracts? And another question says, how do we make sure that when people are working in Glasgow, that it's enhancing their well-being, that they're not just in an environment where they're being exploited in the labour force? So the two things are a little bit together. How do we make sure work is good for your health in the future?
Yeah, well, just to say, first of all, the Fair Work agenda is hugely important and hugely central to all the work that the Scottish Government is taking forward. And to me personally, I am extremely keen that we take every single opportunity we can to move that agenda forward. One of the issues that it's been in the news this morning was around about our Greenport proposal, and the reason we can't reach an agreement with the UK Government is precisely because we are absolutely firm on a red line about payment of the real living wage within those environments, and the UK Government won't agree to that, so it's a red line for us. It's hugely important. I've got responsibility for procurement, and I work very hard with the Scottish Government procurement team to make sure that everything we do everything we can within the limits that we have, because procurement is clearly regulated on a global basis through WTO, to ensure that conditionality on contracts is not only in place at the primary contractor, but extends all the way down through the supply chain as best we can, and using all the levers at our power. So that applies to 0 hours contracts, it applies to the payment of the real living wage. I was delighted to support Unite Hospitality. Hospitality, a sector I have responsibility with, to support Unite Hospitality branch in the launch of their charter, which calls for us to address these issues and for employers to take the steps they need to do, and frankly take every opportunity in engaging with businesses in those sectors that have those zero-hours contracts and low pay as a characteristic of them, to impress upon businesses the importance of tackling this. And to be honest, the majority are quite comfortable moving in that direction. They want it to be a level playing field as best as possible, and they want us to work with them constructively on it. But that, I think, we've got a net zero transition, we've also got this fair work transition, sectors that are challenged in that regard. We want to work with them to move that forward. So it's absolutely core to so much we do. We do not have devolved power over employment law, which means we can't just go ahead and do things we'd like to do. We need to work through using other levers, but we're determined, and that's been characterised in the agreement with the Greens. In fact, that was something we were doing anyway, but it's good to have it nailed down now in that agreement about rolling out conditionality as best we can in that regard. I'm just going to take a minute, if you don't mind, to just pick on something that Gillian was talking about there, around about inspiring young people. I kind of have a kind of split role, if you like, because I take part in these grand events on a national and international stage in the city centre, and we talk about all the important things for the economy, and then I go 2 or 3 miles further east to my constituency, which is amongst the most deprived in the country, and go and visit community groups and schools there, and see the challenges they face. And one of the things I think is really important, and I think universities are doing great work here, and we can do much more, I think, is to impress and open the eyes of young people, particularly in those challenged communities, and raise their level of ambition about what Scotland has got to offer in terms of career opportunities. Those young people should be thinking, I want to go and work in the space sector in Glasgow, I want to go and contribute to net zero through working in those advanced technologies, I want to go and work on life science projects that are going to help tackle the diseases of the future. And I think if we can do that, we'll take huge strides forward in so many of our agenda items, be it net zero, be it for work agenda, be it innovation in the technology and transforming the city and the country. So I think that's something we could all work really closely together and do some real practical things there to take that agenda into those schools and those communities.
Great, thank you very much indeed. That's very clear and indeed inspiring. Susan, there's about 12 questions here about transport, right? And one version of the question is, are we becoming anti-car? Another version of the question is, how are we going to implement a public transport solution in Glasgow when the neighbouring authorities are becoming even more car dependent? Another version of it is, can we have some more cycle lanes, please? But I think the best version of the question is the one that has got the most votes, actually, and it simply says very clearly, how is Glasgow going to transform its public transport infrastructure to create a joined-up 24-hour service similar to other major cities and metropolitan zones? Is it within reach, I guess is the question.
I think it is within reach. I think it's not within reach in the next couple of weeks. I think it is a major, it is one of the big challenges that we face in the city. There's no question. Glasgow's transport infrastructure, although we have enormous assets, a suburban railway system that is the best outside of London, that we don't talk about enough, actually. But crucially, what we've never done, we've also got the only underground in the UK outside of London. But what we've never been good at doing is using those assets to match up with our economic and social ambitions. So we have this underground with stations that are now in zones, parts of the city where hardly anyone lives, where there's no economic activity. And now that's starting to change. The Barclays development in Tradeston, as that absolutely, and it's been amazing to watch that spring up from the ground over the past couple of years, but as that comes to life in the weeks ahead, that actually one of the great things that the people living there will have is an underground station within a really short walk, but an underground station that's probably seen tens of people use it daily rather than what should be hundreds in recent years. So we have this actually, as so often with Glasgow, we have a foundation. We need to build on that foundation and make it work much better for us. Our bus system in Glasgow, we have the lowest car ownership in the UK, still just under 50% of households in the city. So this is absolutely a social justice issue. We have had the biggest drop-off, the most precipitous drop-off in bus usership, passenger numbers of any city in the UK. So something's going badly wrong there. That means there's a lot of people who simply don't have connectivity. So this is a challenge that we need to look at in the round. It's one of the first things that I did when I got this job was to commission the Connectivity Commission, a group of transport experts who came up with a plan for buses, a plan for, yes, that understands that cars, low-emission cars, there's no such thing as no-emission cars, but low-emission cars are part of our future, but they have to be a much smaller part of our future than they are just now. But how do we plan for that? How do we plan what future is our motorway going to have? Should our motorway have a future at all? You know, those kinds of questions. And clearly there were missing links. And Metro is the answer to those missing links. That is connecting up the bits that are currently disconnected. And it's right across the city region. And I think that's what's absolutely crucial. It answers your point about, yes, you know, our suburbs, people who drive into the city to work or to use the many fantastic attractions that Glasgow has on offer. They are also disconnected from the city in a way that is sustainable, in a way that is net zero. And Metro is the answer to that as well. It's comparable, I think, probably the best comparator in the UK is what Manchester has done with its metro system, its trams, where it hasn't replaced in its entirety existing transport networks within the city. It has supplemented and complemented them, and it has created a connected city region, metropolitan region, so that you can get from Manchester to Salford, actually an entirely different city, with the barest effort at all. We need to be able to do that from Glasgow to Kirkintilloch, or from Glasgow to Paisley, from Glasgow to Newton Mearns, from Glasgow to East Kilbride, the places where people come from most to travel and to use, to have leisure services, cultural services, to work in particular, and to be educated, of course, as well at our universities and colleges. So there are immediate short-term plans and there is a long-term plan. I think probably a 20-year plan for investment to ultimately catch up with our European neighbour cities and deliver a modern connected transport system that crucially is net zero and that delivers that major modal shift so that people who drive cars just now don't feel hard done by because we've made sure that they don't need to drive a car, that there are plenty of other options and better options, in fact, available for them.
Great. Susan, thank you very much indeed. We're at 12:15, and I think even though there are some questions we haven't answered, there's 100 loyal people here still in the room. There's about 250 people still watching online. Let's draw this to a close. And all I should really say is that in the shadow of COVID and indeed Brexit that you mentioned, Minister, the shining light of COP has been with us, and if you like, the magnetic imperative of planetary future and planetary sustainability has kind of driven the whole conversation. Underlying all of that has been a lot of comments about the DNA of Glasgow, the power of invention and reinvention, the power to create something different, to burst through frontiers or limitations and create new capability. And Susan made the point very, very clearly that the post-industrial transition was not a just transition, but the post-carbon transition does need to be a just transition. And I believe that what everybody on the panel has said in one way or another is that there are ready means and tools to achieve that. If we're ambitious, we work together and we provide the right kind of leadership. So let's say thank you to all of the delegates for being here. Please join me in thanking Minister Ivan McKee, obviously Mayor Eric Garcetti, Councillor Susan Aiken, Professor Sir Jim MacDonald, Professor Sir Anton Muscatelli, and of course our two special guests, Gillian Doherty and Guy Jefferson. Thank you all very much. Is it fair to say, Susan, that there might be a 24th State of the City Economy Conference next
I hope
year?
so, and I hope we'll have 800 people back in the room again next
Yes,
time as
and
well.
Gordon Kennedy, yeah?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Very nice.